Hi, I'm Todd Wallace, civil engineer, and science rules. Hi, I'm Todd Wallace. I'm Mr. Wallace's brother. I went to Delta High School, actually, which unfortunately for you guys is the better school, although Mr. Wallace probably doesn't agree with that. I'm a civil engineer, and I understand you guys are doing a lab fairly soon, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my job and civil engineering in general and erosion control. I went to Rose-Hulman, which is in Terre Haute, and unfortunately for Andy, also is a better engineering school than Purdue. I'm sure he won't agree with that though right now. In your lab and in Chapter 3, Section 4, you guys read about and then experienced firsthand exactly what I have to do on a regular basis for projects. When it rains, around buildings we have to put pavement and sidewalks and stuff. So that water now doesn't go into the ground, it's got to go somewhere. It can't go through the concrete. Of course, a little bit does make the concrete wet, but the majority of it goes into the storm sewers, okay, which are manholes and pipes. All right, and the pipes have to go somewhere, typically to a pond, and that is where erosion becomes a problem. We work on, like I said, the areas around the buildings, including detention ponds and retention ponds. And we have to design actually what size of stone and the amount of stone that we put down, just like you guys found out that the smaller stones and the larger stones don't work the same. They protect the dirt at different levels and can slow the water down at different levels. We actually have formulas and worksheets, such as this one right here, that we follow that are pretty standard across the country, that tell us what size of rock to use and what size of, we call it an apron, which is the length of rock away from the end section of the pipe. That lets us know exactly how slow the water is going to be and what type of materials we can put after the riprap, whether it needs to be concrete lined or a grass swale, or if the entire channel needs to be riprapped. A swale is an area of land where we're going to channel the water, but we don't have to do it with pipes. Pipes are expensive, so a lot of times we just create a swale, which is usually at a 3-to-1 slope, which means for every 1 foot vertical, it's 3 foot horizontal. A swale is usually grass lined. Typically that's what we try and do because that's also the least expensive. It's also the easiest to maintain. You can just drive a lawnmower over it and it gets cut, maintained, or you can let it grow wild and then you don't have to do any maintenance on it at all. A swale is typically has a fairly small slope on it, and as you guys saw in your lab, that when you increase the slope, the water speeds up and it makes it a little harder to keep the dirt and ground as it is. The grass on the swales help keep the dirt as it is. The stone works well too, but grass is typically a little better because it can grab the really small particles. The stones are really good at slowing the water down, but the grass can filter the water a lot better than the stone can. Swales are grass lined a lot as well because of infiltration. If you put rocks or concrete on the bottom of a swale, that water has to run across the rocks or run across the concrete. The grass in the swale also allows infiltration to take place so that not as much water is running down the hill. When you have a grass-lined channel, it filters out that material from the water, such as the dirt. Oil is another big issue that the grass will filter out, that rocks won't. And then that allows it to filter into the ground and become part of the groundwater table again. The rocks will slow the water down and allow some of that to happen, but not as well as a grass-lined channel or swale would. Erosion control is an important aspect of my job because of the state of the streams and lakes that are in. A a lot of our job is keeping sediment where it is. You don't want to dig out the foundation for a building and have all that dirt be washed out into the streams. You can imagine that, if you took a big pile of dirt and dumped it in the middle of a stream, what might happen? You're always going to cause flooding upstream, and you're also going to kill a lot of wildlife. So a big issue why you need to care about erosion control is wildlife and damaging the streams. Around your house, you might care because it'll create holes in your yard where you can fall and break an ankle. Sometimes riprap channels, if they aren't designed well, the rock can also wash downstream. Over time, if you get a really big storm, it can wash it out. That's another issue. We have to design these things off of certain storms. So you can experience that sometimes it rains a little for half hour. Sometimes it pours down a lot of a rain in a half hour, and sometimes it rains a whole lot for a bunch of days. We call those different storms, usually the 2, the 10, and the 100-year storms. That doesn't mean that that's the storm that's going to happen every 100 years. It just means that it's got for example, the 100-year storm has a 1 out of 100 chance of happening that day, basically. Recently, there was flooding just south of Indianapolis here where they experienced the 500-year storm, and actually in some cities even the 1,000-year storm, which has a 1 in 1,000 chance of happening, basically. That's very rare, and needless to say, there was a lot of flooding because to design for that sort of storm would be very expensive. So we design mostly for the 10-year storm when it comes to swales and riprap. That's what we also design the pipes off of, which usually covers, I'd say, 80 to 90% of the storms. It's pretty rare when we have a 100-year event. The ponds and everything like that are designed for the 100-year event, though, because you don't want flooding in the buildings and in the streets as much as possible. You guys might notice that civil engineering projects are going on around you. Just recently, I knew when I went up to visit Mr. Wallace that the roads were being widened out on State Road 32, and that is something that we typically do. Along with the widening, they had, I'm sure, I didn't see it personally, but I'm sure that they had to add pipes and add in asphalt and make that wider, so they had to do a survey of the site and deal with contours of the land, and we have to design how that water flows along the road and where that's going to go. If you see a building that's being constructed, see the wood walls and see the insulation, that they're probably also just finishing up the site work. Typically they get the site done first and then they build the building, which means that that's a good opportunity to see some erosion control in action there. Mr. Wallace was telling me that a new athletic complex is being built right now, and that you can actually go out and see that they've got erosion control mat laid down on the pond, and in areas that they've got a 3-to-1 slope that they need that. The erosion control mat is laid down so that around the edges of the pond, when they seed, that the grass seed isn't washed away, and that you also don't get big ruts in the sides of the pond. That mat helps hold the seed in place, and it also helps keep the dirt in place so that you don't see those goofy looking ruts and that sort of thing. It also, while we're on ponds, also those ruts and that you see on the sides of ponds sometimes, not only do they look bad, but they also are changing how that pond is engineered. A lot of times you'll see in the news a lot in California when they have a mudslide after a fire, that the mud will actually wash out underneath the house, and the house will then slide down a slope. That's erosion happening really quickly. Over time, though, those ruts in the pond can do the same thing. That the rain is then channeled down those ruts, which then accelerates that erosion, and that wears back the edge of the pond to where it can eventually get underneath pavement or get underneath the foundation of a building and cause that pavement or that building to fail or need repairs. you experienced in your lab, that putting riprap at spots where water is flowing very quickly helps keep the dirt from eroding away and creating a rut, or it's usually pretty ugly and unsightly, as well as that means that dirt is going somewhere else as well. It's clogging up something, clogging up a pipe, it's filling in the lakes, streams, and rivers, that sort of thing. On a big scale, that's what happens on the Mississippi River. It's eroding away, and what you get is the Mississippi Delta, which is a lot of soil spread out over an area, and it's actually spilling into the Gulf of Mexico. Also on a big scale, Hurricane Katrina, when it came and blew in, that large amount of wind and waves not only destroyed all the homes and that sort of thing, but as a civil engineer, when I look at that, I also see that a lot of the plants and a lot of the mounds and bays and gullies around that area were also flattened out and destroyed, which becomes a problem when another big wave or wind comes in, because it's got nothing to slow it down. Erosion control around your house would be things such as gutters coming down, and maybe if you have a sump pump in your house where that pipe goes. A big one though is the gutters. Your roof is a large area, it's a flat area, and obviously it's made so that no water can go through your roof. So all that water has to go somewhere. It gets collected in your gutters and then goes down your downspouts. And if you watch on a really big rainstorm, you'll notice that water is coming out pretty fast from those downspouts. You might notice that your mom's going out or your dad's going out and replacing the dirt around those planting beds around your house. Think about why that probably is in your lab. You know, what have you just done that you might be able to fix that issue for them so they're not always going out and replacing the dirt for those plants. Use your simple engineering knowledge that you've just learned in your lab and help them out a little bit. So now that you guys know a little bit about me, I'm going to give you a tour of the place here, Civil Designs. This is my office area. It looks a little messy, but what can I say? It kind of runs in the family, I guess. I'll go ahead and take you on a little bit of a tour here. I'm going to grab this since we're going to go out in the field. This is more workspace areas here. It's on a Sunday, so no one else is here right now, but usually we're all pretty busy. Directly behind you here, we've got some maps and some files and that sort of stuff. We've got a couple of our projects that we're kind of happy about up on the wall, that sort of stuff. This is a survey that we did for Home Depot. Just kind of think it's neat, some of the sites that we go out and see sometimes. Got a survey of park downtown that we're kind of happy about. Otherwise, just maps and stuff that we use on our jobs, topographic maps and just general surveys. So here's an example of one of our quad maps. Looks like there's a lot of information on it, and there is. Sometimes they can be a little confusing, but it's amazing how helpful they can actually be. So as you guys can see, we're out in the field now. Here's a real good example of erosion control at practice. This is a swale, grass swale that's been lined with riprap. It's next to an interstate. This is an on-ramp right here. So next time you're driving around on a road trip, take a look out the windows and you might see a lot of places. One thing these things also do is they tend to collect a lot of trash. You guys just worked on a lab where you had a piece of gutter filled with some sand and some riprap or some aggregate. Okay, this is a great example of your lab actually. The grass sides of this channel are similar to your gutter. as well as underneath this riprap. And the riprap is the same thing as you place down, just a smaller scale in your lab than what's out here. And pretty good representation of exactly what you guys just did in the lab. As you can see, this is working pretty well. Riprap's all stayed here. It looks like it's pretty old. It's got some grass growing through it. Means it's working well. So today we've talked a little bit about what civil engineers do, and you've gotten to see some of the things that what we design and how that can work for erosion control in real life, and some examples of that are already built. Also an example of a site that is still under construction that's similar to what you may see. Hope you enjoyed today, and hope you enjoyed me talking to you today.